Billionaire invites black driver's daughter to play poker for fun. She was a child genius. The 45th floor open-plan office of Ethelred Digital in downtown Chicago hummed with a low, nervous energy. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but inside, the mood was gray and cold. Everyone was preparing for the next day's global launch of their flagship software, Odyssey. A project worth hundreds of millions. The immediate injustice was sharp and public. An anomaly? Elara, this is not the time for ghost stories, Marcus Thorne, the director of digital strategy, announced loudly. His voice cut through the keyboard clicks. He stood over Elara Vance's modest desk, projecting an aura of expensive cologne and impatience. He tossed a printed report, her report, onto her desk with a dismissive flick of his wrist. It detailed a subtle inconsistency she had found in the server's back-end performance logs. The system is fine because my architects built it. We launch tomorrow. End of story. Marcus was a man carved from corporate ambition, dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than Elara's monthly rent. He surveyed the room, ensuring everyone witnessed him putting the overly cautious junior analyst back in her place. He believed leadership was about projecting unshakable confidence, and doubt, especially from the bottom ranks, was a virus to be stamped out. Elara's reaction was almost invisible. She didn't argue or look up. Her shoulders tightened for just a second, a flicker of hurt crossing her face before being replaced by a mask of quiet focus. She simply pulled the sleeves of her worn, gray cardigan down over her hands. The cardigan was her uniform, a piece of comfort in a place that offered little. It was a soft, unassuming armor against the sharp edges of the corporate world. Across the room, Ben, a low-level IT tech, watched the exchange from behind his monitor. He caught Elara's eye for a split second, his expression a mixture of sympathy and frustration. He knew she was the most meticulous analyst they had. Other team members quickly looked back at their screens, their silence a form of compliance. They knew Marcus was wrong to be so dismissive, but they also knew the price of speaking up. The injustice hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The crowd of employees reacted with a silent, collective cringe. A few of Marcus's senior architects exchanged knowing smirks, reinforcing the idea that Elara was a nobody, a girl who didn't understand the big picture. They saw her caution as inexperience. The whispers started almost immediately. She's always finding problems that aren't there. One of the seniors muttered to another, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. The tension was a low hum beneath the office's forced calm. Marcus had made his point. Loyalty to his narrative was expected. Elara's act of grace was in her stillness. She didn't engage with the whispers or the stares. Instead of deleting her report or shrinking in her chair, she quietly opened a new diagnostic window on her screen. A private instance that no one else could see. She began running a deeper, more complex analysis of the server logs, her fingers moving with a quiet, steady rhythm. She was not doing it out of defiance, but out of a sense of duty to the truth. She knew something was wrong, even if no one would listen. This was the first hint of her hidden strength. While Marcus's team operated on assumptions and ego, Elara operated on data. She had spent the last year, mostly in her own time, learning the labyrinthine code of the company's legacy systems, the digital foundation upon which the flashy new Odyssey project was built. She knew its secrets, its forgotten pathways, and its hidden vulnerabilities. She saw patterns that the high-paid architects, with their focus on new code, had long since ignored. Marcus, meanwhile, made his subtle miscalculation. He saw her silent typing not as diligence, but as obedience. He believed he had successfully quelled her dissent. He clapped his hands together, a broad, performative smile on his face. All right, team. Let's get our game faces on for tomorrow. Big day. He walked toward the boardroom for a pre-launch press meeting, completely oblivious to the digital storm brewing just beneath the surface. He had mistaken silence for surrender, a fatal error for a man who believed he saw everything. The first sign of trouble came not as a whisper, but as a scream. At 8 p.m., with only the core launch team remaining, a piercing alarm blared from the main server hub. Every monitor in the room flashed a single, terrifying message in bold red letters. Critical system failure, cascade imminent. The Odyssey launch was not just at risk. The entire Ethelred network was beginning to collapse. Panic exploded. Marcus stormed out of the boardroom, his face a mask of fury. "What is this? What's happening?" he roared, directing his anger at his team of senior architects. They stared at their screens, their faces pale, typing frantically but achieving nothing. The system was locking them out. The very architecture they had built with such arrogance was now a fortress they couldn't penetrate. "It's the legacy integration," one of them stammered. "It's not responding." Marcus began to mock and blame. "This is your fault," he shouted, pointing at the junior support staff. "Someone must have pushed a bad patch." He was looking for a scapegoat, and his eyes scanned the room, landing for a moment on Ilara. But she wasn't at her desk. Ilara was already moving. Her decisive action was quiet yet powerful. She walked directly to the main server hub at the center of the office, a tall, black monolith of humming machinery. It was the heart of the company, and it was dying. She pulled a standard-issue keyboard from a nearby crash cart. This terminal, this physical gateway to the system's core, became the symbolic center of the battle. It was the one place that couldn't be locked down by software. She plugged it in, and the screen flickered to life with a simple, green command prompt. It was the system's oldest, most basic language, a language none of the new architects had bothered to master. As she began to type, Marcus finally noticed her. "Get away from there," he yelled. "What do you think you're doing? You'll make it worse." Ben, the IT tech, stood up from his desk. "Let her try, Marcus," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "She knows this system better than anyone." Marcus just laughed, a harsh, panicked sound. "She's a junior analyst. She's going to fix a multi-million-dollar system with a keyboard." But as he mocked, Ilara's fingers continued to fly across the keys, each command precise and deliberate. A surgeon working to save a patient everyone else had left for dead. Ilara's movements were economical and precise. She wasn't just fixing the problem. She was navigating a digital maze she had mapped in her head for months. With a final sequence of commands, she isolated the corrupted code loop that Marcus's team had unknowingly created and then ignored. She didn't just patch the wound. She rerouted the entire data flow around the damaged sector, creating a stable bypass. She typed one last line and hit enter. The change was instantaneous. The blaring alarm cut off, plunging the room into a deafening silence. On the giant monitors, the red critical system failure message flickered, turned blue to system stable. Reroute active, and then vanished, replaced by the calm, green logo of Ethelred Digital. The digital storm had passed. It was in this sudden quiet that Marcus Thorne finally cracked. He stared at the screen, his mouth slightly agape. A single bead of sweat traced a path down his temple. His hands, which had been clenched into fists, trembled slightly as he lowered them to his sides. For the first time, his mask of arrogant superiority dissolved, revealing the terrified, incompetent man beneath. He looked at Ilara, not with anger, but with a dawning, horrified understanding. He hadn't just been wrong. He had been a fool. The rest of the room, the architects, the managers, the techs, stood frozen. They had been witnessing a catastrophe, and now they had just witnessed a miracle. All eyes turned from the screens to the small, quiet woman in the gray cardigan, standing before the server monolith. The silence was absolute, filled with a shared awe and a dawning sense of shame for their earlier complicity. The symbolic moment of moral reversal arrived when the CEO of the company, Ms. Albright, stepped into the room. Drawn by the hours of commotion, she had been standing silently in the doorway for the last minute, watching everything. Her gaze wasn't on the restored screens or on her panicked director. It was fixed on Alara, the lowest-ranking person in the room, who had just single-handedly saved the company's future. The power in the room had not just shifted, it had been completely inverted. The silence was broken by Ms. Albright's calm, authoritative voice. "Marcus, can you explain to me what just happened?" The crowd of employees instinctively took a step back from Marcus, a subtle, collective movement of disapproval. They were no longer his loyal team. They were witnesses. Marcus, scrambling to regain control, opened his mouth to speak. "There was a minor glitch, Ms. Albright," he began, his voice strained. "But my team and I managed to contain it. This young lady," he gestured vaguely toward Alara, clearly about to take credit for her work. "He was cut off." "That's not true," Ben said, his voice clear and steady. The young IT tech stepped forward, holding a tablet. He was no longer just a supporting ally. He was a moral witness. "Ms. Albright, Alara identified this exact risk 2 days ago." Marcus dismissed her report. "I have the time-stamped email right here." He held up the tablet, and the proof was undeniable. Marcus froze, his lie exposed. Ms. Albright's gaze, sharp and disappointed, fell upon him before turning back to Alara. "Ms. Vance," she said, her tone now gentle, "tell me what you found." Alara didn't gloat. She didn't list her grievances. In her moment of triumph, she responded with quiet humility. She turned to the terminal and, with a few keystrokes, brought up the system's immutable audit log on the main screen for everyone to see. It showed her original warnings, highlighted in yellow. It showed the flawed code pushed by Marcus's team, highlighted in red. And most damningly, it showed the alerts they had manually overridden and deleted just hours before the crash. The data was a cold, hard narrative of his negligence. She turned to face the CEO and delivered her quiet, powerful moral line. "The data is always honest, Ms. Albright," she said, her voice clear and without a trace of malice. "We just have to be willing to listen to it." In that moment, she wasn't just an analyst. She was the conscience of the company. 6 months later, an email with the subject line, announcing the Odyssey Protocol, landed in every Ethelred employee's inbox. It detailed a revolutionary new company policy for transparent, bottom-up reporting. The system, designed by their new department head, allowed any employee to flag potential system risks anonymously, with a guarantee that the report would be reviewed by an independent committee. It was a complete overhaul of their corporate culture, a direct response to the near disaster. Alara Vance was now the director of the newly formed Systems Integrity Division. Her office was small and functional, but it had a direct line to the CEO. Her mission was no longer just to find problems, but to build a culture that prevented them. She was leading a team dedicated to strengthening the company's foundations, ensuring that ego could never again threaten its stability. Her success wasn't just a promotion, it was a systemic change. The public impact was significant. A feature in a major tech journal had praised Ethelred for its radical transparency, holding up the Odyssey Protocol as a model for the industry. The story of the quiet analyst who saved the company had become an internal legend, a source of inspiration for junior employees everywhere. The supporting character callback came in the form of Ben, the IT tech. He was now Alara's second-in-command, a key architect of the new protocol. One afternoon, he stood in her office doorway smiling. "Remember when Marcus said you were chasing ghosts?" he asked. Alara looked up from her work, a small, genuine smile on her face. "The ghosts are a lot quieter these days," she replied. Her growth was validated not by her title, but by the tangible peace she had brought to the system and its people. A single, stark visual told the story of Marcus Thorne's fall. The sprawling corner office on the 45th floor, once his kingdom, was now empty. The nameplate on the door was gone, leaving behind a faint, ghost-like outline. The only item left inside was a heavy, crystal Director of the Year award from the previous year, now sitting at the bottom of a metal trash can, catching the faint light from the hallway. There was no dramatic confrontation, just a quiet, lonely exit. We see Marcus walking through the lobby toward the glass doors for the last time, holding a small cardboard box with a single framed photo and a plant. As he passes the security desk, he glances toward the bank of elevators. He sees a group of junior analysts laughing as they get on, and for a moment, his expression is one of hollow regret. A whispered thought seems to echo in the silent scene, the memory of his own words haunting him. This is not the time for ghost stories. He now realized he was the one who had been blind, haunted by his own arrogance. His fall wasn't a loud explosion, but a slow, silent fade into irrelevance, a stark contrast to Alara's quiet, steady rise. He pushed the glass door and walked out into the city, no longer an architect of the future, but a relic of a broken past. The core lesson of the story settles in with a gentle, universal truth. True value isn't found in a loud voice or a fancy title. It's built through quiet integrity and the courage to honor the truth, even when no one is listening. Arrogance builds walls, but humility builds bridges to the future. The symbolic final image is Alara, standing in front of the server monolith that was once the site of the great battle. She is now mentoring a new, young female analyst, patiently explaining the system's intricacies. Alara's old gray cardigan, the one she wore as armor, is draped over the back of the young analyst's chair. Alara no longer needs it. She is showing the next generation that their voice matters, that their diligence is their strength. The story closes on this image of mentorship and system-level change, with a soft, final thought for the audience to reflect on. True greatness is not about the power you hold, but about how you empower others.